And in this video we're going to be talking about naming and moving a sheet. And by default, an Excel workbook initially contains 3 worksheets, which we can see down here at the bottom, and they're named Sheet 1, Sheet 2, and Sheet 3. The sheet name appears on the Sheet tab at the bottom of the worksheet. When you open a workbook, the first worksheet is the active sheet. To move from sheet to sheet, you can click on any sheet tab at the bottom of the worksheet window. The Sheet tab scrolling buttons located to the left of the sheet tabs, which are located right here, are useful when the workbook contains too many sheet tabs to be displayed at once. To make it easier to identify the sheets in a workbook, you can rename each sheet and add colors to the tabs. You can also organize them in a logical way. For instance, to better track performance goals, you could name each workbook sheet for an individual salesperson. And you can move the sheets so that they appear in alphabetical order. So we're going to take a look at this right here. So on step 1, it tells us that what we want to do is we want to click on the Sheet 2 tab. So we just go to the tab right here and click on this, and wow, there's more information there. And that because Sheet 2 became the active tab, and there was information there the whole time. We just didn't see it because we were only on Sheet 1. Now, this is the worksheet that contains the budgeted expenses for our group. Now, step 2 tells us we want to click back on Sheet 1, and this is what we've been working on this entire time. And this contains the actual expenses, and when we click on the sheet, it's going to make that the active sheet again. So it's kind of like flipping pages in a book. And step 3, what we want to do is we want to rename the sheet on here. Now, one way of doing this is you can double click the Sheet 2 you can double click the Sheet 2 tab that's on there, and when you double click it, you'll notice that it highlights here on there, and we can rename this. So it highlights it, and we want to name this, and we want to type in budget, B-U-D-G-E-T. So instead of being named Sheet 2, it's now named Budget. And when we press our Enter, that accepts the name of it there. And of course it says the new name for Sheet 2 automatically replaces the default name on the tab. Worksheet names can have up to 31 characters and include punctuation and spaces. Step 4 tells us we want to right-click on the Budget tab. And here's another way. If you click on this, you can also rename the Sheet tab that way as well. But in this case, what we're going to do is we're going to point to tab color. And when we point to tab color, we have a color palette here again. And what we want to do is we want to point to and click the bright green accent 4 lighter 80% color. Now that's on the second row here, and it's the third column from the right. So here we have 1, 2, 3, and there's the bright green accent 4 80% lighter color, and we want to click on that. And when we click on it, you can probably notice just very lightly at the bottom on there that the tab color has changed to that bright green. Now you can really tell it if you click on a different sheet, and now you can see that the sheets have different, or the tabs have different colors. And of course, as you notice that, the tab changes depending on whether it's the active tab. When the actual tab is active on there, the color of the budget tab changes to a bright, solid bright green. And of course, you decide now that what we want to do is that we're wanting to rearrange these a little bit more. So the first thing we want to do is we want to rename the Sheet 1, because this was our budget. And remember, Sheet 1 was where it was our actual information. So we can go through here, and we're going to click on Sheet 1. And a little bit of a deviation from the book, we're going to right click on it this time and click on Rename. And that's the same thing as double clicking on it. And we're going to type in here Actual and press Enter. And of course, once we do that on there, we can notice that the color of the Budget tab there, as I mentioned before, it's that bright green color that's on there. Of course, now what we want to do is we want to rearrange the order of these, because you don't always have to keep them in the same position. You can switch these around. So what we're going to do is on step 6, we're going to click on the Budget tab and hold down our mouse button. And when we see that this little piece of paper is now on the end of our mouse button, as long as you keep on holding the mouse button down. And what we're going to do is we're going to drag it to the left of this actual sheet tab and release our mouse button. And notice that it just flip-flops these two tabs around. That's on there. And of course, as you drag, the pointer changes with the pointer with a little piece of paper on it. And that's what we call the sheet relocation pointer. And a small black triangle shows the position. So if I clicked on this again, notice that right to the left of the Budget tab where we're at, there's a little black triangle. And that little black triangle on there shows its current position. Now the first sheet in the workbook is now the Budget sheet. Of course, you can also see hidden sheets on there as well. And to click the far left tab scrolling button to display the first sheet tab, you click the far right navigation button to display the last sheet tab, and the left and right buttons to move one sheet in their respective directions. So sometimes you may have this area right here full of sheets, and you can just click on these buttons right here to move to the different sheets that are there. Now since we only have 3, these buttons are really not going to work for us right now because we can actually see all the sheets. Now in step 7, we want to click back on the actual sheet tab again, and we're going to enter your name in the left side header box. So right over here, the left side header box, we're going to put in your name. Then next, on step 8, it tells us that we want to click the Page Layout tab. Now make sure that you hit enter after typing, or you select another area after on there to get back into your main document to see the rest of the options here. Of course, notice that when you're inside of a cell, most of these things are grayed out on there. And of course, to get it to reappear in the color, you just need to select on a different cell. So what we're going to do is that once we type this in and we select a different cell here, we're going to click on it, make sure that we click on the Page Layout tab on the ribbon, and we're going to click on the Orientation button. And then what we're going to do is we're going to click on Landscape. So this is almost fitting on one page, but we'll make a little bit of a change here in just a moment to where we're actually going to make this fit in on one page. Next, once we do that, we're going to press Control and Home, and we're going to save our work. Now, of course, sometimes you may have a worksheet and you want to copy that worksheet. And when you want to copy the worksheet, notice that when we right-click on this, on any of these, we can actually move or copy on there. And so let's say, for an example, we want to copy the actual sheet. And to do that, we can just go through and click on Move or Copy, and we can tell it where we want to move it to. You can move it to a completely new book if you wanted to, or if you have multiple files open, you can switch it to a different file. And then you can tell where you want it to go to, either to the end, before this sheet, before that sheet, and you have to click on this to create a copy. Now if you're just wanting to move it, you need to make sure that that is deselected on there as well. Now there is another shortcut that you can use, and that is when you press and hold your Control key while dragging this as well on there. So that is just a little bit of a difference on there, and it's very similar to as we've copied things up before. Now that concludes the information on pages Excel 66 and 67 on naming and moving a sheet. You're ready to move on to the final video, which we're going to be talking about checking the spelling.